Are you like me? Kind of what I sometimes say as modern Amish. Well, that's not original with me. I actually learned it from a friend, but it's very descriptive of something that I think would be fun to talk about on this Thursday. Not only because we could use some good and fun and perhaps some light conversation, but once again, always on interesting ideas, perhaps there's a lesson there that we can learn and use that lesson to be better at the work we do and the life we live. Perhaps that idea could help us have greater insight into our world, our work, our life. Perhaps help us to be more influential for good things. Maybe even make an impact for good. And create a source of not only money, but other great wisdom, insight, and truth incomes. And maybe a few, and maybe many good friends. That's all a part of income. And that's what I want to talk about today, being modern Amish on Interesting Ideas. And the program begins right now. Well, as I oftentimes say, I'm Stan, and I'm not a thief. I don't steal things or ideas from other people. I certainly borrow them and I use them, but I always make every effort that I can to give full attribution to the people who help me come up with interesting ideas, so I'll do that. I love the term modern Amish, but it's not something that I came up with. You see, right now, you should go to a program, and here it is. It's a podcast program which is produced by What It Takes Radio. It is called Car Talk on the Main Street of America. Now, two things. First of all, what is the Main Street of America? Well, that's the term for, quote, the Mother Road, the historic Route 66, one of the highways of the United States of America. It went from Chicago and down and all the way to Los Angeles, and it was the road of leisure and luxury and recreation and travel and obviously worldwide transport. And it's been long replaced as obviously a modern road, but the road still continues, and it has a legend and a history and stories. And just like things that were good in the past, there's still a legacy and a group of people literally all over the world who love the Route 66 story. And my friend Jim Hinckley, he is the historian, the storyteller. If you want to know something about Route 66, there's lots of people who know about it and write about it, but he's kind of the godfather of that story genre, my friend Jim Hinckley. Well, in trying to talk to him about that, he also said, well, Stan, you know what I'd really like to do? I said, okay, what would you really like to do? He said, well, you know, most of my life, I've also been interested in the history of the American automobile. Now, that is a classic understatement. He is obsessed. He has more information and more stories than I ever thought possible about the American automobile. And all the stories that go into the literally hundreds, maybe thousands of companies that at one time made the American automobile, and how they worked and how they failed and what went on. And it is a story of incredible intrigue, interest, innovation, and all kinds of other stuff which characterize what makes this country great, and at the same time makes it say, did that really happen? Nothing's perfect. And so I love hearing stories about the intrigue and the interest and the innovation of the American automobile and the story of many of those luxury and classic cars. And then he combines it with stories of the road. It's a wonderful program. It's a wonderful podcast. And we would love for you to check out. Well, here we go now. Okay, it's Car Talk. Car Talk, from and on the main street of America. Now, Jim is the one who first, in describing himself, used the term that he's modern Amish. And of course, what he means by that is that, the old-fashioned classic Amish people throughout parts of the Midwest, particularly in the Pennsylvania, Ohio area, and very much in the Iowa Amana colonies. And they are known for obviously being very, very much opposed to the modern ways. They don't want to have an automobile. They have horse and buggy. And many of you know of the legends about their culture, their beliefs, their ups and downs, and what happens to the children who try and live in a modern world. All of that has been categorized, storied about, defamed, as well as welcomed. Now, the interesting thing about the Amish and the Amana colonies in Iowa is many of you have heard of the worldwide company called Amana, which is one of the premier companies in the invention of the modern refrigerator, the modern air conditioner, literally the inventor of the modern microwave in some ways. Now, here's what makes the story fun and funny, is the Amana company was founded by a man named George Forrester in Middle Amana, one of the villages in the Amana colonies. Now, I wasn't able to find out if he was a part of the colony in any particular way, except for friendship, but he was the entrepreneur who was challenged by a guy who said, I sure wish I could find something that would keep beer cold in the store. And so George Forrester, a modern day, right in the middle of the Depression, invented a beer cooler. There it was. And that led to him founding the company that became Amana, worldwide company known for its quality. Now, here's the fun part, is that many of the things that went into the Amana refrigerators, air conditioners, and electronic appliances were actually kind of built by the very people who were Amish, who wouldn't use any of those things themselves, but because they were known for their quality and for the work they did, and their loyalty and their sense of duty. They're men and women of great Christian responsibility. The company grew, and Mr. George Forrester became obviously a multimillionaire many times over. The company went through its ups and downs and was sold and went through the usual things that go into a modern American company. But it still is thriving almost 100 years later. My goodness. Well, the point is, what Jim is saying is, I'm one of those people who has real Amish tendencies. I love the past. I love the tradition. I love the simpler times. But at the same time, I like a lot of that modern new stuff. And so he's modern Amish. Now, that led me to this, and very simply, this is the dilemma that I'd like to put in front of you as a thinker, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who wants to make a difference and create good things. The story of Amana is the typical American story. A young boy with nothing comes up with an idea, and he ran the company for almost 50 years, and died at the age of 94 in the year 2000. And it goes on. So here's what we are trying to deal with. Just recently, In fact, the other day, I saw a quote that startled me. And I don't know the person who said the quote, but it's obviously somebody in the technical computer industry. That's it. And here was the line. In our industry, we don't value tradition, we only value innovation. In our company, we don't value tradition, we only value innovation. Now, do you believe that should be? What do you think about? Tradition? No, the guy on Fiddler on the Roof got it wrong. Tradition is a poor guide to life. Or are you one of the modern mavens of the modern world? Hey, it's disruption, baby. It is trashing tradition. It's new stuff, new things. It is innovation, which will make the day and maybe even save the world. How do you deal with that? Well, I'm going to grab a cup of coffee, and you take a few seconds to think about that, and then we'll finish it up on a turbulent Thursday. And as I said, there's always turbulence a little bit on Thursday. Looking at the world, the terrible situation in the small town of East Palestine, Ohio. A modern train now has an old-fashioned train wreck. And the technology of the modern train and of the chemicals and all the things that go into the modern world are blowing up on them and obviously making life incredibly difficult and different for these poor people there. Then there was a very interesting story. Most of us who have any age and stage to us remember that there was a company that almost seemed to rule the world. Big franchise. It was called Blockbuster. And they were one of the first ones to come out, and you could rent a video, a DVD, a digital disc, digital before, VHS, all of that went. And you could go into the store, and then you couldn't buy, well, you could for the price, but usually because they were so expensive, you would rent a video. And then, of course, you would have to bring it back in 2 or 3 days, and if you didn't bring it back in time, in effect, they fined you a lot. In fact, part of their business model was that they would make more make more money on the fines than oftentimes in the product itself. So just recently, they advertised, there's one store left. All the rest of the hundreds of thousands of stores have gone out of business, but there's one left, and it advertised as best they could around the Super Bowl, and they've had scads of people buying from in the last few days. Now, does that mean that the Blockbuster's coming back? Of course not. All it meant is we love nostalgia. We love retro. Yeah, we love tradition. And this just gives people a few minutes to enjoy what they did 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's a reminder. It won't last. It'll soon go away. It was a nice story. It tells us something about the human being. And that's why, of course, I know that if I want to be successful, I better be very careful about trashing tradition. Trashing the old stories, the old ways, perhaps what we would call the antiquated way of thinking. That's right. tradition has strong, strong roots in who we are. And I have to honor that as a friend, as a father who's teaching things to children and grandchildren in the modern world. I have to be very careful to understand that there's great power and perhaps great wisdom and great goodness in the things that have stood the test of time and troubles and are now a part of our traditions. At the same time, that's the Amish in me and in my friend Jim. But then what do we do about innovation? How can we be somewhat like those, I wonder what they talked about. These men who probably worked in the factory and made a good living, and it was part of also their farming, and yet they would never buy and would never use the very product they were building and making a living from. They didn't believe in them. They believed, however, in their tradition of doing good work. And here we go. How do we live in the tension between what is tradition and the innovation we have? Because a lot of innovations are just that. They aren't particularly good or valuable or helpful. They're just new. As someone has pointed out, there are a lot of things that have been invented that nobody uses and nobody will pay for. And there is the invention and there is the patent, and it's a real thing. It's a real deal. But it doesn't do anything for anybody. So how do you honor tradition, still have a spirit of newness and inquiry and innovation, and yet at the same time be very suspicious of that innovation? Opening to it, careful, but yes, taking the risks of adopting that innovation, and at the same time wondering what will really become of it. So there we go. I'm done. Just the question. Are you modern Amish? And as a businessman, as a teacher, as a businesswoman, as a parent, as someone who is the leader of an organization or a church or a place of worship or a community, how do you give honor to tradition? Yet at the same time, how do you honor the spirit of change and innovation? That's an interesting idea, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. Interesting ideas. We're done. I'll be right back. And I'm back, and if I can help you. First of all, many people who've listened to the radio, and many of my friends who are in traditional radio don't know what to do with me or it. That's right. They loved, and I might talk about this tomorrow, we loved the glow of the old tubes. Remember radios and transmitters? They were big and they had vacuum tubes, and they would glow in the dark. They created a lot of heat. The old-fashioned radios had the vacuum tubes. And when Bell Laboratories invented the transistor in the late 50s, everything changed, and now big radios could be made into small transistor radio. You got the deal. But then those large towers and those big transmitters and those traditional radio stations. And here's a guy in a small little studio with a computer and a board who can produce a radio program, and because of the internet, at practically no cost at all, send it all around the world. What are they going to do about that? The tradition. And what do they do with the new innovation? And by the way, that dilemma is going to be yours, whatever business you're in. Whatever business you're in. How are you going to maintain the best of tradition, yet how are you going to make sure you're cutting edge and aware and clear about how you will handle modern innovation? Little bit of lessons about being modern Amish. I'm Stan Houston. Please reach out to me, stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. I and my 3 or 4 different companies can help you in a variety of ways. I'll just simply ask you the question. What do you want? What do you need? What would you like help with? And when it comes to communication, marketing, organizational and personal development, just maybe personal well-being, we have a number of resources and ways to help you. What do you need in your life right now? What do you need in your business right now? Think about that and then reach out, stanhouston@gmail.com. We just might be able to help you. I wish you, no matter where you are at, between a modern fully adopter or an old-fashioned Amish traditionalist, best and blessings to you. And that's the one thing that will never go out of date, is the fact that we all need a blessing. And so in my own way, I would like to pronounce a blessing on you and your business and your family. May it go well for you. May it go very, very well for you. Until next time, bye for now.